Good morning. Welcome to regular council meeting for the Corporation and Township of Minden Hills for Thursday, February 27th. In review of today's agenda, the closed session meeting will take place early in the session. It is a full agenda as the February 13th meeting was canceled because of snow and road conditions, and most of the items have been moved to this agenda, with the exception of the public meeting, which will be rescheduled for a future meeting. Madam Clerk, please proceed with a roll call to confirm attendance.
Counselor Sisson,
Present.
Counselor Saini,
Present.
Counselor McKelvey,
Present.
Counselor Johansson,
Present.
Counselor Ingram,
Present.
Deputy Marshall,
Present.
Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. This meeting is called to order at 9:01 a.m. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading the resolution for approval of the agenda.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Marshall. Be it resolved that the February 27th, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no public meetings or delegations. So we need a resolution to move into closed session.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Saini. Be it resolved that council proceed into closed session at 9:01 a.m. for the purpose of discussing the following. 3 items pursuant to section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding labor relations or employee negotiations, grievance, changes to workload, wages and benefits. 1 item pursuant to section 239(2)E of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, legal updates. And 2 items pursuant to section 239(2)F of the Municipal Act as amended regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And there's 2 legal opinions.
All those in favor? That is carried. Now move into closed session. Okay, welcome back. Madam Clerk, we have a resolution to resume open session.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell. Be it resolved that closed session adjourn at 10:55 a.m. Open session resume.
All those in favor? That is carried. Do we have a report from closed session? Okay. Move on to adoption of minutes from the previous meeting. We have meeting minutes from January 30th for regular council and public meeting. And February 4th, special meeting minutes. Any questions or amendments? Please read the.
Moved by Counselor Hannison, seconded by Counselor Saney. Be it resolved that council approves the meeting minutes as follows: January 30th, 2025, regular council; January 30th, 2025, public meeting minutes for fees and charges; February 4th, 2025, special meeting minutes regarding budget.
All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to payments of accounts. February 13th and 27th. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Saney. Be it resolved that the accounts in the amount of $1,776,032.15 be approved for payment.
All those in favor? Is carried. Sorry, can somebody get that door? I've got a chrome bumper that is just shining. Okay. Mayor's report. And there's just a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. One, there has been quite a bit of chatter on the social media, and there has been some county meetings, and this concerns the land trust and this everything that is going on there. There is a open meeting, a public meeting that will take place on March the 26th, which coincides with county council. I do not know where that will be at this time. We have determined that county council chambers is probably not large enough to handle the number of people that will show up. There may be some special rules concerning this this meeting, vis-a-vis if you want to speak or so on. Please, anybody who is interested, it will, all the information will be on the County of Haliburton website, and you can follow from there. It probably also be in the newspaper, but the latest information will be on that County of Haliburton website. It's very difficult because there's a number of things that are being confounded here. This meeting is specifically to talk about one specific initiative and not to talk about the whole Highlands corridor. Again, you know, we in Minden are not running this meeting. This is a meeting of county council. So follow up at the county council website. That was really the most important thing that was going on. The other one is that HHS is having a series of meetings that were being held. I think they're all being held in Minden at the auditorium at the long-term care. This was to talk about their future plans. I think today's Highlander had a fairly large article about that. I think it's important to note that there's two two things happening in parallel. One is the plan for the hospital, and two is the plan for long-term care. And so they're pretty much describing that, I think, what the status is today and where they're looking to go. So anybody who's interested, again, that's on the HHS website. There's all sorts of information, and I believe you need to register to go to the meeting. But the meetings, I know the first meeting was held in person and on Zoom. I assume the other two will be the same, but that's happening in our area and obviously affects us. So, please look out for that. That was really all that I had. Councillor Sisson, you.
Just want to go back to your land trust dealer. I've had numerous calls from the people in Snowden Township because it pretty much takes in all of Snowden Township. They're very concerned and they would like a chance to speak. Would that be possible at this meeting?
Again, just to let you know, it's county council that's running this. So I don't know exactly what rules they're going to set up. I think one of the things that, this is not going to be like a debate. This is a public meeting where somebody wants to speak, will have the chance to speak. Depending on how many people want to speak, I mean, they may have to determine, how they do that. But this, in talk to Snowden Township, it takes the whole Highlands corridor area, takes most of the south part of Minden,
Yep,
right across, and takes up almost all of Highlands East. So those are really the two areas most affected. Again, this meeting here is not to discuss the Highlands corridor. It's to talk about this specific request for this subset of land that they are looking to change the status of for to protect it. And what the protection is, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and get involved in this, the protection is on that portion of land you would not be able to do forestry, mining, or aggregates. Okay, and that's the only thing. And I think they've gone and they met with the forestry folks who have all the logging rights in that area, and they were in agreement. That's fine, because most of the area we're talking about is significant wetland or rocks, and there's no trees growing there anyway. So, but again, it's confounded because the land trust is involved in both the Highlands corridor and in this specific initiative, that these things are getting confounded. But again, I don't want to speak for the county. People just follow what is on the county website and go from there. Councilor McKelvin.
So I don't understand. So the Highland corridor, which is what a lot of the people are upset about, which is a reserve designation, isn't going to be on that public meeting?
It's not what the public meeting is about. The public meeting is about this one small segment of the area that's going to get this special designation. It's mostly some of the wetlands.
So the county 2 years ago passed a resolution to support it in principle, subject to wanting more detailed mapping. And I don't see any more detailed mapping, and I don't know, like, is the county going to consider
Sorry, to support what in principle?
the Highlands corridor?
Okay, well, that's not what we're talking about at this point.
Okay, so when can we talk about that then?
I have no idea when it's going to come forward.
Okay, when can we talk about it at this table then? Because it does impact a lot of our township.
To the best of my knowledge, okay, there are no other initiatives going ahead on the Highlands corridor.
But they're trying to get the whole thing designated as a.
That's not, at this point, that's not what the discussion is. The discussion is on this, I can't remember the Milburn Kendrick area.
Yeah.
That that small area, which is mostly wetland, the significant wetland,
So
it is what is being discussed.
what's the big Highlands corridor swath that goes from Lutterworth through Snowdon over to Highlands East? When is that going to be discussed, or when are we at this table going to be able to weigh in on this?
That's, again, there's nothing coming forward on that at this point. There's been no other requests made on that.
So the county passed a resolution to support in principle,
Principle.
subject to additional mapping, which they haven't got. So is the county going to pull their support in principle until,
I can't speak for the county.
okay,
This is, the situation on not the Highlands corridor, but on this specific area is a bit of a unique situation whereby somebody nominates an area to have this special designation, and then the MNRF and the MOECP, Managing Environment Conservation and Parks, then take that under advisement. They would then have public input, and then they make a decision, and then they would, I don't want to say enforce it, but that they would supervise it. And all that's really on the table right now is for this specific area not to have aggregates, mining, or forestry. Nothing else changes. But I will let them speak for themselves on that. That's what the meeting on the 26th is about. I'm not going to say it's not confusing, but all right, that's all I had on Mayor's report. We go to Roma Board.
Thank you, and through the mayor. It's hard to decipher what exactly is going to be important to the council meeting now to report after our very broad and comprehensive conference that we just had with an incredible record number of people attending. It was very well attended, as I said, and we had a great deal of participation in both the survey responses were more than double that we got back, and that the one of the complaints that we're getting in our surveys is there's too many good sessions to go to all at once, and we haven't figured out how to approach that in our 2.5 days of conferencing to alleviate that. But that's always a good thing. Particularly, of course, Chantel was there and did the keynote speaking, and also took questions from the floor, which people really, really enjoyed. And I must say that she's offered to come back next year, and we're certainly interested in that as well. So we really appreciated her broader commentary and political insights that she offered at that conference, and answering delegates' questions from the floor was very, very rewarding. There were about 580 meetings with ministers that were attended in 2.5 days. So this really impacts a time that ministers put aside, that's 2.5, 3 days, to meet with delegations. Of the surveys we got back, about 76% of the people who filled out the survey went to delegations. Some went up to 6 delegations. And what we're finding is there's about 580 meetings, delegations, about 700 maybe submissions. And what's happening is when you make a submission, it's not clear enough. And so unless it's a really clear and well-worded, putting that forward to meet with them, then they kind of say this is my time priority because this is a clear question. So what AMO Roma is thinking about doing is putting workshops together, which without charge for municipalities to know how to put this together, to make sure that you can get there, how you word it, what you're asking for, how to be clear in communications. So that's something that we're looking at doing, so people aren't turned away because of how their proposals are worded. So that's very exciting. So many things to report. Meetings with the that we had put forward to the present government that is not in election mode, we're kind of on hold with until after the elections. So even bill number 241, which was the municipal code of conduct, there were some things that the province has agreed to in terms of what all of our municipalities have been pushing for in terms of code of conduct of municipal and councilors. But some of them are a bit weak, and so there's still some negotiations to be done on that. It's weak because of how do you deal with something that's very egregious, just really not very good. And a counselor really should not be representing that community or be allowed to have that position with the kind of behaviors that were used. So there was suggestions about how to do that, such as a 100% vote from counselors to remove someone who is in that situation that has been by the integrity commissioners said that they violated the act. And so there's a lot of confusion around what this is, how it's going to work. But I don't think that a member removed under the process, whether they should be able to sit for the rest of their term or be running again is still in question. But the main thing is that if you have a counselor, you should not have to have 100% for egregious behavior to take someone off. That should not be left to councils, and particularly in our small towns, that's really something for a judge or someone else to decide. The other thing that I think is important on that is training for our integrity commissioners as well, and making sure that they're following the rules of what they need to do when something comes forward to them. So that was another item that's still outstanding. So we're still, in discussions with whichever government gets elected. But as we know from previous conferences, when 100% of the delegates stood forward and said, we want this municipal code of conduct to come through from the municipalities, you know that this is something that really needs to be addressed and will be continued. The other items we can, so much, I'm just trying to highlight a couple of things. I'll just say that if you go to the site of AMO, there is items that are being raised for the elections, and to be sure that you look at those items that are from across and what the candidates' responses are from across the province people are running. Very important to exercise our vote today. So look at what councilors have said, or sorry, people who are running have said, and please be sure to vote today. That's very, very critical for all of us. I'm just looking at my last note here, and that is to say that one of the things that we are doing with Roma and through the LAS is the wastewater issue, which is a big issue in terms of how we develop in rural areas and what we do. And I want to say that the benefit of going to this particular conference and the connections that we made with this project with LAS was very, very important. And I'm not going to steal the thunder from what our CIO is bringing forward on this as a result of the conference and our participation on this. But this is a big deal. It's not going to happen overnight, but it deals with our water and wastewater situation and growth and how we deal with the cost of that infrastructure. So just stay tuned for that later in our agenda. It's very important, but I think we begin to see how we can address local problems by attending to these conferences, by getting involved in the broader picture. And if nothing else, that is the reason we need to be continually there and know what's going on and be 2 steps ahead of provincial changes and directions. So I guess I'm just so overwhelmed with things to say. I'm going to end it there, and please feel free to ask questions later if you like. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Bill 241 was introduced to the legislature in December and of course died like all other open bills at the time the election was called. And then it remains to be seen what will be reintroduced into the next legislature after the election is completed. Okay, moving on to correspondence and communications. Often we do a lot of this on a consent agenda. And we ask if somebody wants anything pulled forward. Councillor McKelvey has requested that 14.5 flag raising World Autism Day be pulled forward, and Councillor Saney has requested items 14.3 and 14.6 be pulled forward for discussion. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Saney, that council direct staff to pull forward correspondence items 14.3, 14.5, and 14.6 for discussion.
All those in favor? That is carried. Next resolution.
Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Saney, that council receives correspondence and communication items 14.1, 14.2, and 14.4 as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. We start with item 14.3, which is Councillor Saney's motion to read sovereignty of Canada. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Johansson. Whereas U.S. President Trump has advocated for Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. Whereas U.S. President Trump has initiated tariffs against Canada trade, which will harm municipalities, industry, the working class, economic and social successes experienced in both Canada and the United States. Whereas there appears to be a dismantling of democracy in the United States as witnessed by the increasing Supreme Court challenges to President Trump's declarations. Whereas the negotiations between two sovereign nations are handled at the national level. And whereas the border between U.S. and Canada has been one of friendship, respect, neighborly relationships, and valuing peace. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Minden Hills supports sovereignty of a united Canada, and we stand united for a Canada that remains strong, free, independent, and characterized by peace, order, truth, and reconciliation, and democratic governance. And further, that council directs staff to circulate this motion to the Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation, and the Trade of Ontario, our local MPP, AMO, and FCM.
Motion on the table. Does anybody wish to discuss? Councillor Saney.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me bring this motion forward. I just want to highlight some of the differences between the US and Canada on the world stage. And I'm going to do that by showing why we're so different and why we're so esteemed on that world stage. And one of them has to do with the international conventions that have been not only signed, but also ratified by Canada that the US has not. And that includes the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which we have been a signature of with the United Nations. The other one that the US has not signed, or sorry, they have signed but have not ratified, is the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. The other one, which only 2 countries still have not been a signature, they have signed it, which is different from ratifying. It means you can put it forward, but we're not going to say we're going to agree with it, is what the ratified means. Which they have not ratified is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And only US and Somalia have not ratified that particular convention. So I want to just say that because sometimes we don't acknowledge how important and how much of a leader we are in Canada in terms of human rights issues and acknowledging some of the kinds of things that are so important, not necessarily for us every day in our environment, but on that international scale as well. And we have a very good reputation. Having worked with the UN level with NGOs, I have seen how we are so important when it comes to our Commonwealth groups that meet and ratify or support ratification or signature to different amendments and changing these kinds of conventions and the wording. So it's an interesting, we often think of the Commonwealth as the king and the queen, but the Commonwealth has some really important political work that is done that is not being always rolled over by the US being the strongest economic force right now that we see. So I just wanted to point that out, and I want to thank you for letting me bring this resolution forward, because sometimes we gotta know who we are. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Is that the motion or do we,
Motion on the floor,
Okay.
just call the
all
question.
those in favor? That is carried. Discussion for item 14.5, flag raising on World Autism Day. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading the resolution.
So through the chair, council, I just have the resolution amended just to reflect that we raised the flag on April 2nd at 10 a.m. in recognition of the World Autism Day. So the amendment, if agreeable, would be Councillor McKelvey and Deputy Mayor Shell. Do you agree with the change? Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that council receives correspondence 14.5 flag raising request, World Autism Day as information. And that council directs staff to raise the flag on April 2nd, 2025 at 10 a.m. in recognition of World Autism Day.
Councilor McKelvey, did you want to add to it? Okay. All those in favor? As carried. Madam Clerk, please read the resolution on the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, support of Canadian Ontario government negotiations with the United States government on trade and tariffs.
Through the chair, so Councillor Saney requested this item be pulled forward for discussion. So I've just drafted the motion in support of the EOWC's resolution dated February the 10th. Is Deputy Mayor Shell and Council McKelvey in favor of that amendment? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receives correspondence 14.6 Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus support of Canadian Ontario government's negotiations with the United States government on trade tariffs as information. And that council supports EOWC's resolution dated February 10th, 2025, and directs staff to provide copies of this motion to the Prime Minister of Canada, the Premier of Ontario, AMO, FCM, and our local MPP.
Any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. So as we move through the other, do we have to have a motion on the consent? For the others? We already did. That was so long ago. All right, we move to department reports. 15.1. Mr. Timmons, please. SCAO.
This is delegation at its finest, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Mr. Timmons apologizes. He is otherwise tied up this morning. Council, this is really our annual report before council where it's an acknowledgement of the health and safety policy. Our joint health and safety committee has reviewed this policy, but is also doing work on other policies. And it's really for council's information and acknowledgement. Thank you.
Do we not need to sign it at all?
No, I think council resolution acknowledging is adequate, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson, that council receives report 2502 Public Works Occupational Health and Safety Policies Information, and that council acknowledges review of Policy 58 Occupational Health and Safety in accordance with Section 25(2)J of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, RSO 1990.
Well, any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Ms. Kosh, please join us. Talk about waste and recycling.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. Good morning, Council. Through the chair. So this report before you today is just presenting the 2024 waste and recycling overview for the township, and it's also providing a year-over-year data analysis. This information in the report is really important not only for compliance with the legislation, but also to help us with our year-over-year planning as well. So I will highlight some of the initiatives and enhancements that occurred in 2024. We did have a lot of new programs that took effect. The one I want to highlight is the new alcohol container collection program, which has been a great hit. It has really helped the local service organizations, and the uptake from the public has been really great as well. We also are now accepting brush at the Scotch Lane landfill, which is great. And then that material gets grinded at the end of the year and we use that as cover. We also had our first annual Trash or Treat Halloween event and a holiday food and toy drive that took place. And important information is Minden Hills became the 84th bee city in Canada, and we celebrated National Pollinator Week. And in that, we did have some tours with the public school at the cultural center, and they got to have some presentations and then explore Nature's Place. We had 3 household hazardous waste events that took place, and they were very successful. And we also held 2 confidential paper shredding events. In my report, you'll see the waste and recycling data comparison. So I won't go through everything, but I'll just highlight again the alcohol containers that we collected almost 90,000 containers. Another one that I wanted to pull and give mention to is the mattresses. So 648 mattresses were collected and recycled. So this is instead of these going into the construction demolition material, and then where we're paying to haul it and dispose of it. Mattresses are very, very heavy when wet. So this is great that we were able to collect those separately and have them recycled. The reuse center we kept open year round this year for the first time, and it worked out well. So that is something that we will continue to do. And we collected approximately 4 40-yard bins of material that was diverted from the landfill. In my report, I did include some fun facts, and Mayor Carter, I did include some animals that are around this area, the moose and the bear. So those are just some fun facts to help illustrate how much materials were collected. If council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Councillor Ingram?
Through the chair, excellent report, very well detailed. Glad we hired you. Do you have any explanation? Kind of figured this would happen, why we're down 350 on construction and bulky waste?
So through the chair, I think that would be because of the mattresses. So they were included in construction and waste in 2023. So now that we're pulling those out, that would be my best guess, but it can be consumer habits and just projects in general, right? So it's a big variable, so it could change year over year, but that would be my guess is a large portion of that is because the mattresses are collected separately.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's in another meeting I was at, there seems to be a general trend that we're generating more garbage. It's funny when you think of all the different recycling programs and so on, yet the amount of garbage seems to grow. So I'm not really certain what that does to our, our future plans.
So through the chair, that's a very good comment. And I probably should have highlighted this, but the township did implement a new waste card last year that took effect in July. And that does have the garbage bag allotment on it. So it does allow us to enforce that garbage bag allotment that was already in place. So I think it's important that we continue to do that, which holds residents accountable and helps them to look to these diversion and recycling programs that we do have available to them.
Any other questions? We have a resolution.
Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receive report 25001 Waste Management 2024 Waste and Recycling Overview as information.
All those in favor? Is carried. Thank you very much. Community Services. Ms. McGuigan.
Good morning, Mayor and Councilors. So before you is report 2506, the Minden Hills Cultural Center Advisory Committee November meeting minutes for council to receive as information. If there's any questions.
I have a somewhat, maybe somewhat related question, but from time to time when I drop in there seem to be many things going on at once, whether, different groups and so on and so forth. At some point, we sort of run out of resources or run out of space for, pickleball versus basketball versus this or that or the other thing. How is that going? Like, are we getting to that point?
Cultural center.
Oh,
It wasn't exactly on subject, but it was close.
yeah, sorry. I
Slow
jumped,
down there.
I jumped ahead to 15 too. You can hold my question.
That's all, yeah.
Yeah, this is it.
There is, the recreation coordinator is doing a fantastic job of working through the recreation programming for youth, adults, and families. I think we're utilizing it and we're learning how to play around with some different items as we bring them in and learn the interests. To answer your
Okay,
question.
well, hopefully you'll have similar problems at the cultural center soon. Counselor Sandy.
We did have similar problems. It was running out of space with the children's art exhibit. It was amazing. I gotta say, the number of parents and kids that turned out were phenomenal, and it was very exciting. And I know we go through it, we all have our favorites. I want to suggest that people go there. But there's one particular one that talks about Minden as because it's a happy place. And she drew this beautiful sunset that kind of looks like her Minden Hills logo, only better. I would love to see this as you drive into the streets of Minden, somewhere on a billboard with her name and her quote on it. I think we've got to highlight, I mean, this is going to be our future mayor who did this, right? So I would love to see how we could expand what's going on there, bring more attention to it. And it was just a phenomenal exhibit and I want to also thank the foundation because now we have a Minden Hills Cultural Foundation that's working with our cultural committee and with the gallery, etc. And they're the ones who raised the money and donated the equipment to make sure that they had the material to do the kinds of artwork from clay to drawings to all sorts of other things. So it's good to see how all these organizations are working well together. But I'm going to come back and ask again that if we can put this particular art exhibit somehow permanently, because it's so uplifting and beautiful. So feel free to go and check it out. Thank you.
Counselor Johansson.
Thank you. Can I ask a question that's not here? Like, general question for you?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. There's two things I'd like to ask. One is where's the skating harness at? The other is there, I don't know the history of the Dawson skating rink, but could you bring back a report? Maybe if we can move it back to the cultural center. I don't know why it was moved from there or somewhere else that's more accessible to people.
So through the chair to Councillor Johannesson, so the ice skating harness, I have a follow-up call with the company, the pulley that they have on order. They tried to go to a different company to see which one would arrive faster, but it looks like they're being sourced by the same one.
Through the chair, sorry, so we're here to talk about cultural center minutes.
Yeah.
That's what's on the agenda. We just need to stick with what's before us on the agenda today. The staff are going to bring forward those monthly reports and updates to the next meeting to catch up, but we can't be getting offside of what we've publicized on our agenda.
Fine. Okay. Counselor McKelvey.
I have a question from the cultural center minutes, so we're good. But I've asked this before, and I've actually gone to a couple of their meetings just to see if I could get a better understanding, but there's this Minden Hills Cultural Center gift shop operation is going to be taken over by the foundation. And it keeps talking about an agreement and it doesn't say it here, but at another meeting I went to, it talked about it's being lawyered. We at this table during this term of council do not know anything about this. So I just don't want to see us go off and spend a whole lot of money on a lawyer before we at least talk about it.
So through the chair, that's not a problem. I mean, that's something that staff can take offside and discuss and then bring forward at a later date with more information.
When would you expect?
I'll have to have that discussion with staff and then.
Okay, Councilor McKelvey?
And I'm assuming this was a previous council issue that was decided on, like, I don't know anything about it. I don't think the new council members know anything about it. So, like, I mean, maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe I don't have to have a report if it's already been well discussed and considered and ramifications and costs and all those good things. But let's not go to a lawyer before we.
Madam Clerk?
Through the chair, that's not a problem. Staff can have those discussions, and if it's just a simple email to update council, we can send an email out. But if it does stem from more information that we provide in a report form, we will report back.
You remember anything?
I don't really, off the top of my head, I'm not recalling this. I don't know if you.
I do have some recollection, but I think I'll let staff respond to that because I just think I should let staff respond to that.
Okay. Any other questions about the cultural center? Minutes. Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson, that council receive report 2506, Community Services Department, Minden Hills Cultural Center Advisory Committee meeting minutes dated November 12th, 2024 as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Chief.
Good morning, council. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this report is a follow-up report from a report we had, I believe it was 2 months ago, about the change of ownership for the Scotch Line Tower on property that the township owns. The report is to update council on a couple of questions that were raised around the ownership of the tower and the change of ownership, as well as the insurance. So I have nothing further to add to the report itself, and if there are any further questions.
Is everything, just before I go to you, Councilor McKelvey, is everything answered to your satisfaction at this point?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is.
Councilor McKelvey?
Thank you. This has been on 2 other agendas, it was Bearcom. And now all of a sudden we have a new name. I'm just trying to figure out, where did Bearcom go?
So through the mayor, so there was some confusion initially about who was actually, so the gentleman that owns the company that is taking over ownership works for Bearcom, but this is through a private venture. He has his own company, and so he had changed the name of the company to reflect that.
Councilor McKelvey?
So number 8 of the agreement says that the agreement is from February 27th of 2025, but does not say that it ends in 5 years. The report, however, says that it's from January 3rd, 2025 until June 30th, 2030, which is 5.5 years. Nothing's matching here. I don't know what we're doing.
Through the chair. So the original term of the contract was a 10-year contract. So this new contract with the new company and the update is just to take on ownership for the remaining portion of that initial contract.
Council McKelvey.
And I get that, that's what's in your report. That's not what's in the agreement. So we can't do this today, in my opinion. I'm not going to do this today because it's talking about giving them another. It's not saying that it's for the balance of the 5 years, then another term of 10. It says it's for 10. It's the dates
Clerk?
and years aren't matching.
So through the chair, under 9, it basically states that, sorry, let me just find where it is.
That's the rent.
That's for the payment, yeah, for the lease, from July 1st, 2025 up to and including to December 1st, 2030. So we can make an amendment within that, without that allotted time in section 8. And just pass it as amended today. I would hate to hold up the contractor
Councilor McKelvey.
again.
Councilor McKelvey.
I just need to know, what are we doing? And what are we going to change the agreement to be? So we're going to start it from today, February 27th of 2025 to July 1st or December 31st of 2020 or like 2030, sorry? Or are we giving them,
What was your,
So through the chair, December 1st, 2030. That was the arrangements.
I think we need to put that in there. In the term of this agreement. And as far as with an option to renew under the same terms and conditions, like, do we really want to give a 10-year deal at this? That's 15 years down the road. Do we really want to commit to the same terms and conditions? What about the rent?
So if I may, through the chair, whenever we do an extension of an agreement, we always bring it back to seek council's approval before we proceed. At that time, council could say we wish to have a new agreement.
Councilor McKelvey.
The wording in number 8 says that it can be renewed for an additional term of 10 years under the same terms and conditions. It's not up for negotiation at that point if this wording stays in here.
Well, it says it can be.
So through the
It's
chair,
with
when
an
I did,
option to renew for an additional under the same terms and conditions. I don't think that's an option. I don't think you can change the terms and conditions if you give the 10-year extension, the way that's.
I disagree, but go ahead.
so through the chair, whenever we have the choice to extend, we can decide whether or not to extend or not, or whether we wish to enter into a new agreement. That's the option to extend for an additional 2 years, 5 years, whatever the term is. If council decides not to extend on its current term, at that time, staff would take it back, develop a new agreement, see if the party was still interested or seek other interests at that point.
Deputy Mayor Shaw.
So when I read this, I understood that it commences as of today, but the July 1st is just when the payment happens. Okay, so, but, and then it up into and including December 1st of 2030. And I'm wondering if in 8, if we can just say that with an option to renew the lease for an additional term of 10 years, period. And then in 10 years from now, whoever the next council is, won't be me, takes a look at this and decides to do whatever they would like. So I'm turning away from the microphone. But
That's okay, I understand.
yeah. Just a
So
thought.
just
And then we have the option to do it, or the next council has the option to do it for an additional 10 years. And I mean, it omits the same terms and conditions. Because again, that may change. Thought, I don't know. Just keep it simple and can get passed today.
So it's just amend section 8.
Just for clarification, I just have, the second paragraph in the resolution that council approves the proposed lease agreement as amended in section 8 to include, wording to extend with the option to extend a 10-year term. Do you want me to put in with the approval of council? Upon approval of council? Or just period?
Just period.
Okay.
Councillor McKelvey?
So do we not need to put in number 8 that the term of this agreement shall commence February 27th, 2025? Up until, when is this one stopping? That's where I'm. Okay, so that's what we need to put that in, I think, because it's. Am I correct? This is supposed to just go till then?
That is correct. That is the original agreement, yes.
Sorry, through the chair. And so the second line would say, and that the term of this agreement commence at the day of passing
The date of
to,
signing.
pardon?
Date of signing.
Okay, the day of signing. Well, no, it would be at the term of passing of council.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. To 2030, is that December, that's what I mean, December 1st, 2030. Okay.
All right, everybody's heard the amendments. All those in favor? Can you start with the resolution? Please read the resolution, Madam Clerk.
Move, no, that's okay. Moved by, sorry, Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson. And Counselor Sisson, are you comfortable with those amendments before I proceed? Okay. By Counselor Sisson, that council receive report 2502 fire tower transfer of ownership and proposed lease agreement with Scotchline site as information. And that council approves the proposed lease agreement as amended in section 8 to include an extension of a 10-year term. And further that the term of this agreement commence the day of passing to December 1st, 2030. And that council permit access to maintain their radio communication tower. And further that bylaw 2516 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement with Netcom Ontario be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda for approval.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Chief. Ms. Doherty, please come join us for the next couple of hours. I'm gonna let you go through, get through these things.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. So the first report is 25-05. This is a report for a zoning bylaw amendment at 2513 Davis Lake Road, which is application PLZBA 2024-061. The property owners are proposing to change the zoning from general industrial exception 5 to rural residential in order to reflect the current use of the lands, which is residential. The public meeting was held on January 9th. However, decision was deferred in order to hopefully confirm whether legislation would require a record of site condition. I did communicate the details of the property to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and they did confirm that because the use is historically established and not changing, that the record of site condition was not required. Therefore, the zoning bylaw amendment has been brought forward without any holding provisions and is recommended for approval.
Any questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, that council receives report 2505 planning as information. And further that bylaw 2528 being a bylaw to approve the zoning bylaw amendment for lands subject of PLZBA 2024-061 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda.
All those in favor? It is carried. To 2506.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 2506, this is a report regarding zoning bylaw amendment for 5373 County Road 121, which is application PLZBA 2024-016, and that's to permit St. Albans Boys and Girls Club to reopen a children's camp at this location. The public meeting was held December 12th, 2024. A decision was not made at that time, in part to receive public comments if there were any, given a commercial use. There were no public comments, but we also did have to resolve some concerns with the site plan at that time and to receive from the applicant the proposed special regulations to ensure that the camp adheres to the policies of the official plan. So the zoning bylaw amendment will provide relief to parking as campers will primarily arrive by bus, so they do not need the number of parking spaces that the zoning bylaw would otherwise require. The bylaw also provides protection and use regulations for the shoreline, and then also includes limitations to capacity and lot coverage, which would relate back to the policies of the official plan. So the zoning bylaw has been included in the bylaw section of the agenda and is recommended for approval.
Questions? Councillor McKelvey?
Just a quick, and I think from what I've read, the applicants are all right with this, but it just seems like maximum lot coverage of 1% is very limited, and I wondered why, because it's a big piece of property.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I apologize. I don't know if I included it in the report. It is actually for 1% of what of the property. It does add to quite a lot. I don't think they would ever in their wildest dreams meet 1% of lot coverage. They did originally actually put in for only 0.25%, but I increased it to 1%.
And they could always change that at some future date if.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, absolutely. If they found that they needed to, I'd be surprised if they did,
Right.
but yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Saney, that council receive report 2506 planning as information, and further that bylaw 2528 being a bylaw to approve the zoning bylaw amendment for land subject of PLZBA 2024016 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda.
All those in favor? It is carried. All right, so we sometimes have consent agenda for some of these shoreline allowance applications. So 15.5.3 to 15.5.8. Councillor McKelvey has requested that 15.5.6 be pulled forward for discussion. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading the consent resolution.
Thank you. Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor Saney, that council directs planning item 15.5.6 report 2510 planning application to purchase a portion of the Shore Road allowance PLRA SA 2024075 St. Albans Boys and Girls Club be pulled for discussion.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. So read.
The next resolution.
Please read the next resolution.
Moved by Counselor Hennessy, seconded by Counselor Saney, that council receives the following sale of shore road allowance applications and planning reports as information. 2507 PL SRA 2024014, 2508 PL SRA 2023044, 2509 PL SRA 2024072, 2511 PL SRA 2024076, report 2512 PL SRA 2025010, and further that council direct the planning department proceed with the said applications in accordance with policy 19 as amended, and further that council refers bylaws 2523 and 2524 to the bylaw section of the agenda to stop up, close, and convey part of the original shore road allowance with respect to the said applications.
All those in favor? It's carried. So just to make sure we're doing everything right here. So when does the 15.5.6?
So we would, through the chair, we would discuss that. That's the next motion on the floor.
Okay. Councillor McKelvey.
I just wanted to find out where they're planning to purchase the shoreline road allowance, because I believe it was mentioned at the public meeting for the zoning amendment that they weren't going to purchase all of it. So I wanted to know roughly where they're planning to purchase. And in particular, the relation to the road allowance that leads to that lake. Please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if council looks at the key map that is on the second page of the report, although it might be a little bit hard to distinguish, the lot comprises lots 13, 14, and 15 concession A. Where they want to limit the purchase of the shore road allowance is specifically to lot 14. And this would also correspond with, if you look at report 2506, which we just had, which is related to this application. It's exactly the area in front of the C3 exception 23 zone that they want to purchase. So just specifically in front of the camp itself. And this would be approximately 380 to 400 meters away from the township's road allowance.
Any other questions? Resolution?
Moved by Counselor Hugh-Anderson, seconded by Counselor Sani, that council receive report 2510 planning as information, and further that council directs the planning department proceed with application PLRA SA 2024075 in accordance to policy 19 as amended.
All those in favor? That is carried. Before we go on, next is that.
So through the chair, we just have two more reports for planning, and then if you want to break for lunch, that would be suitable.
Always open to suggestions. So please, 15 or 25.13 or -13.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So report 25-13 is for severance agreement application PLSEVA 2024-064. This is a required condition of consent application H-009-22. It's intended to hold the owner or any future owners to development restrictions and mitigation measures that were identified in an environmental impact study that was prepared for the consent application. And entering into the agreement will satisfy that condition, and this would be the last condition that they would need to meet in order to finalize the consent.
Okay, and so where's it go from here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if it's executed by council, then it would be registered on title, and it would also then form any future development on the properties.
Questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, that council receive report 2513, planning as information, and that council pass bylaw 2525, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a severance agreement with Carol and Roberta Cox.
All those in favor? That is carried. Next, 25-14.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, report 25-14 is regarding severance agreement application PLSEVA 2024-073. This is required for consent applications H-033 and 034-24. The owner and any future owners would be required to adhere to the recommendations of a site evaluation that was completed for the consents by entering into the agreement. And this again would be the last condition to fulfill to finalize the consents.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, that council receive report 2514, planning as information, and that council pass bylaw 2526, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a severance agreement with 10002211785 Ontario Inc.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very succinct. It's 11:59. We will break till 12:30 for lunch. Do we have lunch? Okay. And we're back. And we're joined by the Director of Finance, who's going to take us through a couple of items. We start with 2505.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you is a recommendation to issue a tax receipt for a donation based on appraisal, if there's any questions.
This is standard procedure.
Yes, under policy 35.
Any questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receives report 2505 finance tax receipt request as information, and that council accepts the Victoria Ward art donation, and that staff be directed to issue a tax receipt based on the appraisal of 2,500 for the 2024 calendar year in the name of David and Tammy Ray.
All those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
2506.
So this is another donation receipt for a donation of some artwork. It's a little bit different. We used some values of the person's current artwork instead of an actual appraiser because of the value. It didn't make sense to get them to pay for a full appraisal.
Okay. Are there any questions on this? Mr. McKelvey?
Sorry, I didn't realize that. I guess I missed it in the thing, but is that not against the policy?
So this is why the recommendation is separate from the other one, because we were using some data that was collected by Miss Kelly of the information. So it was almost like an appraisal, but not an official appraisal.
But does not the income tax and the policy not require that it has to be an official arts appraisal?
Well, that would be up to council through the chair to decide if you would like to issue a tax receipt based on this information.
But I guess the question is that if it was not based on an appraisal, that was an official appraisal, would the CRA even accept it as a tax receipt?
Yes, basically under the Municipal Act through the chair, as long as council approves the donation and the treasurer signs off on the CRA slip, then that is deemed valid.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Is this allowed in our policy?
So this is a little bit of deviation from the policy, but that's why we brought it forward. Because we don't want to deter people donating artwork to the township.
I have a problem with this, but that's just me.
Counselor Saney?
Yes, thank you. I'm afraid I have a bit of a problem with it too, not following the strict policy because there's so many artists out there, and how do we make these kinds of decisions if we don't stick to our policy and the word of that? And if our auditors, I mean, we're assuming the auditors would accept this as it's brought forward, but it would still be a lot cleaner if the policy was followed. And having said that, I want to thank Gary and Victoria too for all the work that they do at our cultural center and in the work they did with the kids and some of their expertise that they share with us. Great contributors to our art community. But there's a lot of artists out there, and I'm really afraid of stepping outside of our policy to start approving the value of different people's art that I have absolutely no ability, because, you know, I would pay 25,000 probably for that grade 8 art piece right now to have it in our collection. So I would like to stick with policy. Thank you.
So stick with the strict. Not the strict adherence, but just follow the policy. Any other questions? Yeah. That's
If I may, through the chair, if we read the resolution as it stands, you would have to defeat it at that point if that's council's position, or we can just receive it as information with further information back from staff if that's something that.
I think,
they're willing to follow up on.
I think we're not really looking for further information from
Okay.
staff. It seems to be a pretty black and white type
Yep.
of a scenario.
So
That's,
just,
that's my question. If
so just-
something happens, then, so if staff goes and follows the policy that's in place and they get an estimate, do they have to bring it back to council or can they just go ahead and pay it because they have an estimate from a professional?
I think they would probably use similar to the one that we just
So we
passed.
still have to come back. Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay, read the resolution.
okay. So moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Ingram, that council receives report 2506 tax receipt request as information, and that council accepts to Gary Bundell art donations, and that staff be directed to issue a tax receipt in the value of $1,400 for the 2024 calendar year in the name of Gary Blundell.
All those in favor? That is defeated. 2507.
Okay, so this is report, a follow-up report from budgetary discussions of how we're going to move forward to ensure that the township is getting the best bang for their buck. So we've reached out to LAS Canoe Procurement, which is a arm's length entity from AMO. And so we've looked at different things of having staff training from LAS Canoe Procurement, putting that onto the website to make sure that we're in compliance. And it really expands our horizons on getting a better procurement price at the end of the day. They don't do all things that we need, but where we can, we will be moving forward, getting quotes from LAS Canoe.
Amongst others.
Yes. And we're comparing those against the others that we get.
Okay. Questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councilor McKelvey, the council receives report 2507, enhancements to procurement procedures for information purposes only.
All those in favor? Is carried. Report 25.08 has been pulled. And will be coming back in a future meeting. So we go to 2509.
Through the mayor and as chair, this is a report to procure 2 pickup trucks that came out of budgetary considerations. And we followed what council was concerned about with future tariffs, et cetera, and getting these pieces of equipment in place to make sure that we can do the services for the public. So we went for everything that was on the lot and compared apples to apples. And we looked at several quotations, and we also looked at including 4 winter tires on rims for future insurance savings. So we're looking at saving future operating dollars as well. And you have the proposal in front of you and the recommendation. We did look at each individual area that needed it, which was environmental services and the community services department of what their needs were. And everyone sat down and vetted it, and this is the proposal in front of council.
Okay, questions? Please read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Saney, seconded by Counselor Ingram, that council receives report 2509 finance vehicle procurement as information, and that council directs staff to procure under section 7.1 of the policy 17G procurement, and that council approves the purchase of 2 2025 Silverado 1500 4-wheel drive crew cab pickup trucks from Curry Motors in the amount of $58,564.50 plus HST per truck.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And CAO? Talk to us about water and wastewater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Saney for not stealing my thunder. This morning, council, we became aware of an opportunity to participate in what we call a feasibility study and potentially building a business case, working with LAS related to water and wastewater. They're looking at different ways to help municipalities fund water and wastewater infrastructure. And so one of the things they're exploring is potentially a joint municipal service corporation. We've been invited to nominate somebody to the committee. It doesn't necessarily guarantee they're accepting nominations from municipalities. They want to shortlist to a number of municipalities. We're not committing to anything beyond participating in the feasibility study business case, but I think it's very exciting for Minden Hills to participate in, learn more about, and potentially influence where this might go. Once a business case is built, it would go back to the LAS board before it would come before municipalities. There may be benefits to being one of the municipalities that is participating on this committee. So council, if you're amenable, we would like to nominate our Director of Finance and Treasurer to participate in this initiative, supported by myself and the Director of Public Works. Thank you.
My question was, is at the county, we've been, again, sometimes we on county council don't necessarily have all the latest up-to-date information of where staff is. But you know, we've had two presentations from Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and County of Frontenac, who have been leaders in this area. And it was my understanding that we were working with the County of Frontenac on this area. So I'm just wanting to know how all this works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding of the initiative, I've chatted with Frontenac staff.
Yeah.
They're piloting very innovative technology within this sector. They're not looking at a joint services corporation. So it's two very different things.
No, but they were looking at a single services corporation for their county.
Okay.
And
I
believe
guess for me, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a great initiative, and we could certainly work with that group. I think working with the local authority services doesn't limit us working with any other group.
No, I'm not. I just want to make sure that the work that's being done at the county and the work that's being done here is at least somewhat coordinated, and we know, you know, even if we're going in two different directions,
Right.
that we are at least working together and communicating back and forth. And yeah, okay. Sorry, Councillor Saney first.
Yes, thank you. Those are two different animals. The technology that's being developed, and we've been to several workshops about it, is a type of technology for rural areas, which is very exciting. And how to get that done is another thing that's very exciting. What this is going to help with is our tax base and our infrastructure on how do we fund the growing infrastructure needs for water and wastewater, particularly in rural areas. So although this project is not limited to rural areas, it is extremely important to us more so than urban areas, because it's a plan that will help us in the long term to keep our taxes down and take the renewal. We know we only have so much life on our water and wastewater in our urban areas. So this is actually an economic feasibility study, if you will, to show how we could take this and put this particular part of infrastructure costs into a group municipal corporation, if you will, where you had the option of joining or not. So you could opt in or opt out. It depends. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is going to take 3 to 5 years to get operational. There are so many legal issues to overcome to do this, and so many technical issues. And for us to be there at the table and have our technical issues as a small community part of that discussion is a real bonus for us. So I would suggest that this is totally different than what the county's doing. And if we get our foot in the door in this kind of negotiation, we also have the opportunity to be one of the few to first apply and be part of this. It doesn't commit us to it. I'm very excited about this. We had a much more elaborate explanation of this at our last Roma board meeting. And I was very excited to see this on our agenda coming forward. So that's just a little bit of background. They are two different animals.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before I get to Councilor McKelvey, there's two components to this. There's the water and wastewater and the technology and whatever it is that you do. And then there's the whole financial side of it. The Frontenac County is setting up I think it's a county services corporation, which is what we here in Halliburton we're also looking at. It's rather than going out and having a number of different municipalities together, it's having it all within the county. Okay, so it is a way to finance it. So it's not, we're not looking at two different things here. We're looking at two different ways of doing something. And I think that all I'm saying is, yes, I think I would support that we would be part of this, but we also keep conversations and open up with what's happening at the county level, because this is a way of doing something that allows you not to have that huge upfront cost, and helps you with this infrastructure gap. So forget the technology, forget whatever the hell you're doing. This is all talking about finance, and this is one of those areas where the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus and Roma are not necessarily, working hand in hand. So that's important. That's for the Kelvin.
So I agree that these are very similar investigative processes. And the delegation at the county, I was really excited about, because that's going to help get development in areas that don't have municipal water and sewer systems, and it's so expensive for a developer to put them in. So it's a financing thing. I'm 100% agreeable to Gwendolyn being put on this. I'm not trying to fight that or anything. But I agree, let's make sure that we work with our county, whoever it is that's at the county, and I don't know who was assigned that, is definitely been continuing to work with Frontenac, is that it? So it would be nice that we just share information that's on.
And Frontenac we're using as a model.
Yes.
So
And it was a very good model, I thought. So.
Yeah, so it's just two different ways of looking at it. So let's just make sure that we keep a foot in both camps and understand what's going on, because this is going to be a lifesaver for municipalities, particularly rural municipalities, being able to expand into areas that you can only dream of in the past, even so far as smaller projects that. That's right. Any other questions? Resolution?
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Saney, that report 2505 LAS Municipal Staff Committee Water and Wastewater Utility Business Case Development be received as information, and that Gwendolyn Lonergan, Director of Finance Treasurer, be nominated to participate in the Municipal Staff Committee being created by LAS to develop a business case for potentially creating a joint municipal service corporation for water and wastewater.
All those in favor? As carried. All right. 1572.
Okay, so the next request was received from Counselor Shirley Johannesson, and the request is to attend the AMO conference in Ottawa in August.
No.
Yes.
Questions? Read the resolution.
Okay. So I just made an amendment just to approve counselor's attendance. So moved by Counselor Saini, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that council receives Counselor Johansson's request to attend the AMO conference in Ottawa's information, and that council approves Counselor Shirley Johansson's attendance.
All those in favor? As carried. Bylaw. Not bylaws?
Yep.
I wasn't sure if we just added a few agenda items since the start of this meeting or something.
Through the chair, no items added.
Okay, so Councilor McKelvey has requested the budget bylaws be discussed. We had the bylaw fee for water service for Leavenworth Pines community. Bylaw 2508 was the fee for water services for the village of Minden. 2509 was the fee for wastewater services in the village of Minden. 2529 was estimates and expenditures, and bylaw 2530 tax rate bylaw to be discussed. Are there any others that we need to discuss in detail? See none. So you give me too many options here. And if then.
Through the chair, if I may, if Councilor McKelvey just wants to provide some clarification on the discussion, we can just go from there. If we need to pull them, we can,
Okay.
after we hear, but it may just be comments or amendments.
Councilor McKelvey?
Confused if I want to talk about the bylaw. Don't we have to pull it from the consent agenda?
If you're just making a comment or you just want the bylaw to be amended, we can just amend it with, if you need them pulled, because the thought is to have them removed or I honestly don't know where the discussion's going. So I thought maybe we'll start the discussion, see where it's going. If we feel that council needs to pull those resolutions, we'll do it at that, or sorry, those bylaws, we'll do it at that time.
Okay. So you want me to ask my?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
well, one of the first things I have to ask is on the Schedule A to the bylaw 2529. There's a column for changes. And I have no idea what that is, what those numbers are. There's 24 budget, there's 25 budget, but then there's a column for changes and it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if we need to have our treasurer.
All right, I'm just pulling it. Yeah. So I would just amend that changes column. Because I was following a previous document. Through the chair.
So just so I make sure.
Yeah, so
What page am I on?
it's under bylaw 2529. It would have been page 2 through the chair. I think it should just be the 2024 budget and the 2025 budget as columns. And just amend it.
Yes. Okay. Right, okay, sorry, yeah. So was the changes just the difference? Was it?
That column shouldn't be there.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I
So
apologize.
the column needs to be removed. Okay,
Yes.
fine. Did you have another? Counselor Ingram?
Thank you. Through the chair, I want to get clear in my head what we're doing with this grant money, because it doesn't add up to me.
What grant money are we
The
talking?
emergency preparedness, 50K to 200K is for what? Is that for programming for the arena?
Mr. Mayor, we're not sure where we're looking.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, it was on the budget. We talked about it at the last meeting. We had three grants, community emergency preparedness for a generator, community sport and recreation for 150K to 1 million, I'm assuming for the curling club roof, and emergency preparedness 50 to 200K for programming. I'm wondering if that is correct. Because last time we talked about buying a boat with some of that money, and we didn't even talk about that, a fireboat. 35,000, we're gonna use that grant. So I'm just curious what that is.
So we're,
So, Mr. Mayor, we may have to take a break and look into this. We weren't aware of these questions coming
They were
forward.
brought up at the last meeting, actually, Madam CAO.
you know,
We still haven't got
This-
an answer.
we're not looking to reopen all of the budget here. This was just a matter of, you know, approving our rates and so on. So Councilor McKelvey, what?
So the bylaw that's before you has a Schedule B for capital. At the last budget meeting, there was some questions that it didn't seem to be making sense on the generator, that we were only going to put a small amount of that money towards I think it was the engineering of the arena. Okay? We were told kind of in this conversation that the other balance was going to be for a firebolt, which we had never heard of before. The clerk was asked to look up, well, the clerk looked up a report, and in her defense, the first line was a trillium. And so I have to throw this out. She said it was under a trillion, but the problem is the report had further information in it. The first one was a trillium application to do programming at the community center. The second was community sports and recreation infrastructure funding stream to do the curling club roof. And I believe we're going to try and get some accessibility buttons at the arena with it. The third was a community emergency preparedness grant. And it was very clear, it was $50,000 for a generator, towards the generator. It was never anything mentioned about a boat. So now we're being asked to do a budget that shows the capital on here, and the boat is still not here. So I still feel that that question that we weren't really allowed to ask at the last budget meeting needs to be answered here, because
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the fire chief did answer the question to the best of his ability. He has access to a grant every year. It's only available to the fire chief. They can purchase equipment that falls under the needs for community safety, community education. Every year they've applied and got a grant. The boat that he is talking about is an inflatable raft that he feels would be helpful in the event of flooding. That's what he's applied for. It's not a big boat. It's an inflatable raft is what he's applied for.
And it comes under that specific
Right.
grant that is
Right.
available to fire departments for this type of thing.
And if we don't get the grant, Mr. Mayor, there will be no inflatable raft.
Councilor McKelvey.
so I'm just trying to figure out, because this report which was on October the 10th, is not talking about the same grant you're talking about. Madam CIO, if I might. This is the Community Emergency Preparedness Grant. This council approved our application for $50,000 towards the generator. There is that other fire grant that everybody gets every year, and you get to put what you're, and that's a different grant. So it kind of came out that 35,000 of that $50,000 is going to go to a boat. Maybe it's a route. I'm not against the boat. I've never had a chance to talk about the boat. But on the capital, it's not even listed. And to say, if we don't get the funding, we won't use it. Well, we have other ones listed here that are based on funding. So I just don't understand. And it seems a little bit strange that all of a sudden this was changed after we passed a resolution directing staff to apply for 50,000 towards the generator. It was just by almost an accident that we found out about the boat.
Sorry, through the chair, for that grant specifically, once we went back and reviewed the grant eligibility requirements, we could not apply for an actual generator, but we could apply for the engineering portion of it. So that's where the other items came into the grant application. So it was highlighted in the budget process for the engineering of that, because we were also talking about purchasing the actual generator at the same time.
Any other questions? Councillor Ingram?
Just a comment on all the work staff did on this budget. Did a great job. Unfortunately, I can't approve it. My reasoning behind that is Councillor McKelvey had given us an opportunity at the last meeting to find $100,000 to $200,000. And I feel it incumbent upon us to listen to her, which we didn't, in the best interest of the taxpayers. And this certainly isn't in the best interest of the taxpayers to just throw aside $200,000 because we got no more time in the day. Thank you.
Madam Director?
Through the chair, just a point of order, council has approved the budget at the last budget meeting. This is just to ratify the tax rates of what council has already approved as the budget for 2025.
Councillor McKelvey?
So you're saying we can't talk about any of this? The same as I couldn't talk about it at the last one?
That would be up to the chair.
I think that if we want to get into some of these things, it would require a motion to reconsider. We have passed the budget.
We passed a resolution, which the budget is going to be passed by a bylaw 2529. So, and that's fine. If you don't want to listen to some suggested changes, you don't have to. It was very clear at the last budget meeting
What was very clear?
that you didn't want to listen to, or I shouldn't even be suggesting it.
I think you're taking a very interesting view of the situation. I mean, you were talking about speculative changes, any changes that, were not going to affect the taxpayer in the long run. So this was not something that was going to help us in our budget. So anyway, what is the situation? I mean, do you wish to put forth a motion to reconsider? Go ahead.
I had made some suggestions and was cut off to no more suggestions. So do you want them or not? It doesn't.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you need a motion to reconsider. You have ratified a budget resolution. And I will let the clerk tell you how many people have to agree to even reconsider and reopen the budget.
Okay, so through the chair, at that at that budget meeting of February 4th, just to be clear to the public, the motion on the floor was basically to pass the budget as it was presented. That's the motion that council voted on. That's the motion that approved. And therefore we brought forward the bylaws for the budget to finish passing the budget. So if council is considering a motion to reconsider, that would go on the floor today. You would have, in order to determine whether or not council's wishes is, in order to have that approved, sorry, you would need 5 members of council. It's a 2/3 in order to get that resolution to reconsider that budget motion. Then we would come back at another meeting and determine whether or not
Okay.
the
You wish
changes.
to make a motion to reconsider.
Sure. I just wanted to talk
Please
about,
make your motion.
well, I
So-
just,
So, sorry, to be clear, Councilor McKelvey, was it that you wished an amendment to the bylaw? Or was it that you wanted to reconsider the budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's not a housekeeping amendment to the budget or to the bylaw, then it is a motion to reconsider to reopen budget talks.
Please make your motion.
you can just bring out the bylaw to approve the budget, and if you get it through, then so be it. We don't have to reconsider.
Well, if you want to have your discussion, it has to be.
I can give you information that I tried to put forth at the budget meeting, if that's what you're asking, but if
No,
you're
I'm
good-
asking whether you want to reconsider the budget.
I'm not satisfied with the budget, so yes, I guess I would want to.
Please make your motion.
Whatever the motion has to read.
So if I may, through the chair, do you mind if I just have a couple of minutes? I'll draft a motion. We'll just take a quick break. I'll draft a
We'll be back
motion.
at 1:50.
Thank you.
Well, I
Kel?
think they go together.
Okay.
One establishes the law.
Right, right. Okay, so recorded vote on.
Okay, sorry, 1 minute. I just need to clarify. Are we, with the deputy clerk, is the sound working? Oh, it is now? Okay, sorry, I just received a message from staff just saying they couldn't hear. Okay, so in that respect, what we would have to do then is pull the two bylaws by motion. We'll pass that motion. If it passes, we'll remove them from the other and then circle back. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull the bylaws that Councillor McKelvey is requesting. Okay, so that would be 29 and 30. And council would have to pass that resolution to pull them for discussion. No, you don't want to do that?
Recorded vote.
Okay, but I can't do a recorded vote on just two bylaws, so I have to pull them, make them their own separate bylaw to do a recorded vote.
Yeah, I do the recorded vote on all. Okay, go ahead. Do what?
Slam paper.
I didn't slam
I'm-
anything.
Wanting a recorded vote on two bylaws. They do not show as a consent agenda item. I did in fact tell the clerk in advance of the meeting I would want those two votes. So there is absolutely no way that we need to do all of the bylaws in a recorded vote. There's the two that I've asked.
Mr. Mayor, I think and I agree with Councillor McKelvey. I think the point that the clerk indicated for discussion, and that's not what counts. We can pull the two bylaws, vote on them separately, and vote on the rest.
So we'll do first 07, 08, 09. Correct?
So the first bylaw has all of the bylaws in it, excluding the last two,
Okay,
because you do it in procedure.
fine.
I'll pull out the two and won't, unless council wishes to do the two first. At this point, I'm happy to accommodate.
I'm sorry. It was 25, 14.
So
was-
2529 is the estimates and expenditures bylaw, and
Correct.
the other bylaw would be 2530, which is the tax rate bylaw. The
Right.
other bylaws would remain in the motion, excluding the 2514, which we
Right.
pulled the report from the agenda.
Right, okay. Go ahead.
So I'll read that motion first then.
Yep.
Okay. So, sorry, moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2503 PLZBA 2024061. Bylaw 2507 B for water services for Leavenworth Pines community. Bylaw 2508 B for water service for Village of Minden. Bylaw 2509 B for wastewater service in the Village of Minden. Bylaw 2516 to execute the lease agreement with Netcom Ontario. Bylaw 2523 SRA PL SRA 2024014 Kovac. Bylaw 2524 SRA PL SRA 2023044 Marfleet. Bylaw 2525 severance agreement PLSEVA 2024064 Cox. Bylaw 2526 severance agreement PLSEVA 2024073 Peters. Bylaw 2528 zoning bylaw amendment PLZBA 2024016 St. Albans.
All those in favor? That is carried.
Okay, so I'll need a mover and a seconder for the two remaining bylaws, 2529 estimates and expenditures and 2530 tax rate bylaw.
Deputy Mayor Shell, Councillor Johansson,
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor Johansson. Be it resolved that the following budget bylaws be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2529 estimates and expenditures, and bylaw 2530 tax rate bylaw. This is a recorded vote. I will be starting with Councillor Ingram. Councillor Ingram, for or against?
Against.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Johansson, for or against?
For.
Councillor McKelvey, for or against?
Against?
Thank you. Councillor Saini, for or against?
For.
Deputy Mayor Shell, for or against?
For.
Councillor Sisson, for or against?
Against.
And Mayor Carter, for or against?
for,
So in.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to?
yeah, go ahead.
So the vote is carried, 4 in favor and 3 in opposition.
We'll move next to confirming bylaw.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson, that bylaw 2531 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its meeting of February 27th, 2025, be received, read a first time, considered, read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? That is carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Saini, seconded by Councillor Johansson, be it resolved that the February 27th, 2025 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 1:24 PM.
All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 13th, 2025. And for those of you who haven't noticed or forgot, today is Election Day here in Ontario. Polls are open till 9 PM, so get out there and vote. Thank you.